you can, if you go out and you just talk about wrestling, and that's great, but the personal issues, and when you have guys like a Terry Funk, who is crazy like a fox, he was working the whole time he would get to the arena. He would see a young guy and mess with him backstage. And nobody knew about Terry Funk if he was insane or not. Andy Kaufman and Jerry Lawler, they worked the boys backstage because that's what they did. It just created that aura. It created that magic. That's what's missing today.
Do you
It's
think?
been missing.
Sorry, I was just going to ask. Do you think that Lawler and Kaufman were completely on the same page, working together,
Yes.
or so
No.
everything? So they were working everybody else. They were 100% in
Yes.
cooperation. There was
100.
no kind of going off script or anything.
100%. And even when they did go off script, they were cool with it because that was the understanding. Andy, that was the way he worked. Lawler loved that style. They did it to a T. I've talked to Lawler about this. I know. I asked him I said, we rode, took a trip, Del Rey, Lawler, and myself when we were in WWE. And I don't remember how we hooked up. But I asked him about it, and I had said, "Man, please tell me how the angle came up. Tell me about the Letterman deal." He says, "Oh, come on, I don't want to talk about it." I said, "No, you got to talk about it. I want to hear it. I'm marking out for this." So then he got into it, and he's talking about it because when Lawler did that angle with Kaufman on Letterman, he got calls from promoters all over the states. Paul Bosch, the man that broke me in, called and thanked him for slapping Lawler, thanked him for standing up for wrestling. I mean, they bought into it. And it was one of those things that Andy just happened to say off the cuff. You know, he was supposed to come on the show, and he and Lawler having two segments and talk, and then the next segment, Andy was going to stand up and they're going to shake hands, and then Andy was going to sing, you know, "It's a Beautiful World" or something like that, and everything was going to be done. And then Lawler told Andy that, well, if we do that, we're kind of done in Memphis. And Andy says, "Yeah, well, I wonder what would happen if you just slugged me." And Jerry told him, says, "I don't know about that, Andy. I mean, it's national TV. They might not even show it." And Andy said, "Yeah, maybe you're right." So they kayfabe. They didn't see each other backstage at Letterman, or they kept everybody at bay and all that. And it wasn't, nobody agreed to it. Andy just mentioned it on the phone that day. And Lawler said he stood up at the break, or it's the second break, whatever it was, because he knew that was the last chance. And as the music was playing, he stood up, and that's when he slapped him. He gave Andy the eye, you know, like, "Here it comes." And Andy kind of made eye contact and hauled off and hit him. And they kayfabed Letterman, everybody. I remember the next night when Dave came on, did his monologue. He was so pissed because nobody smartened him up to what they were going to do. And he says, "You know, I want to apologize to everybody about last night because I think we were more on the set of like a Saturday morning wrestling show, and I thought it was a bunch of crap," and the people popped. So, you know, doing stuff like that where you say things, again, I don't remember what Terry called it, but that's been done for years. And it was done sometimes with the understanding that the other guy was cool with it, and sometimes the guy went off script. And you know, Shawn Michaels with, "Hey, I hear Bret Hart's having sunny days." Whoa. I mean, you got to understand that in those days, at that time, the tension, the heat was real. I mean, not just with Shawn and Bret, but I was right in the middle of that with Sonny and Chris Candido, and that whole episode. The dynamic personalities that you had with Shawn and Bret going back and forth. You know, with Bret making remarks about Shawn being a boy toy and wearing the leather and making implications that he might not be the man he says he is, and things like that. You know, they took it to heart, and then they got in the ring and they had this incredible match with the dynamic and the tension and the electricity. It was insane. They were both trying to show each other that they were the best. They were better, and I'm going to make you look great. I'm going to make you look great. I'm going to bump like this for you. I'm going to bump like that for you. And it was that way because they did go out there and got right to the line. Sometimes they crossed it, but that's what made that dynamic. Like you said, those are some of the angles, some of the feuds you got into the most because it was real, it was authentic, and that's what's missing.
Yeah, I'm actually rewatching that period just now. I kind of came to professional wrestling a little later than most. I only became hooked by wrestling when I was about 14 or 15, so I actually missed that whole period of time. But I'm going back and I'm watching I'm trying to watch every episode of all the main wrestling shows from year to year, and I'm on like 96, 97, and I'm actually just gone past that promo that you're talking about. And when Sean says he says something to that effect to Brett, and you can just see the eye contact between them. It is real, but it's impressive how they're able to channel that into creating the best product they can.
But that's what this was. Not is anymore, but that's what this was. They would have matches back in the 1960s, a guy named Dory Funk Sr. and Mike DiBiase, Ted DiBiase's stepdad. They would have these Texas death matches, and they had a famous one in Amarillo where they fought outside the arena. The people are following them, and they fight back to the back where DiBiase's car is right there. And people know it's DiBiase's car because they've seen him drive up and whatever. But they smashed the windshield, smashed the car, and Mike's going, "Hey, that's my car." And Dory said, "To hell with you, you son of a bitch." And they go back, and Mike's saying, "What the was that?" And Dory says, "Don't worry about it. I'm going to get you a new one." You would take that rivalry to a next level where people would believe it, and the only two who had to know what they were doing was you and the guy you were working with. Sylvester Stallone and Arnold Schwarzenegger had the biggest rivalry through the years, and I just heard an interview with Stallone where he talked about he was the guy driving me, and when my son died, Arnold was the first guy to call and see how I was doing. And I remember them bad-mouthing each other in the press, talking, taking jabs at each other, do the movies, and hey, Stallone would show up on the set, and Arnold said, "What, are the gyms closed, or where'd you, did you lose weight?" He goes, "Yeah, see, you found it," and just back and forth, and there was an intense, heated rivalry. But then he said, when it came down to it, he was the guy pushing me to be better. He was the guy that was driving me. Same thing with Sean and Brett. Looking back on it, I'm sure both of them will say, yeah, I didn't like the guy at the time, but without that guy being there pushing me and right along the tracks with me, I mean, God, I got in fights backstage. Brett ripped his hair out, ripped Sean's hair out. I mean, it was intense. It was real. And when you had to go out on camera, and you had to present yourself as the Heartbreak Kid and the hitman, Bret Hart, the best there is, best there was, best there ever will be. That helped fuel whatever was inside your head, inside your heart, and it was real. It was intense. It was legit. And for all the people who didn't believe it, you knew when these guys got to the ring, there was something there.